Good afternoon and a very warm welcome to NTV at One. Let's start with a look at the headlines. In Mityana, CALT refuses members to register for national IDs. A Norwegian Refugee Council ends operations in Gulu with plans to concentrate on other areas in Uganda. And has their creation done more harm than good? An analysis on Uganda's cultural institutions and the toxic mix of politics. Very glad you could join us. The Norwegian Refugee Council has ended its operations in northern Uganda after 17 years, saying it has done its part for the region. It was originally scheduled to exit last year at the end of the Recovery for Acholi Youth Program, but this was delayed at the request of the Norwegian Embassy in Uganda.
DJ.
We are now looking into the refugee crisis in Ajumani, Moyo area. But that is also subjected to funding. So we are still soliciting for funds. If we manage to get funds, we will definitely do something in Ajumani.
Our role basically as local government in the north is to maintain the facilities that are put in place. We need to engage the parents, they contribute some money so that the buildings are maintained, children are sent in schools, and then our performance improves.
A threat to farmers in Busia. Now, the weed, which appears in flower form, has attacked several gardens in the region. Striga, also known as witchweed, has mainly affected farmers in Masaba sub-county. The result is poor harvests and lack of food for many families.
On the first sight, the purple-flowered plants look beautiful, but this is witchweed, scientifically referred to as striga. It has affected several acres of maize, millet, sorghum in Busia district and is threatening to wipe out the production of the cereals in the area.
We are experiencing a serious problem of the witchweed, which has severely affected the crops. We plant, for example, maize, cassava and a number of crops, but it has seriously affected the crops.
When a farm is infested with striga, the affected plants hardly grow more than 1 foot tall. The weed does not grow on its own attaches, attaching itself onto the host plants. According to the small-scale farmers in this area, the noxious parasite weed has caused them losses and poor harvests.
I always plant here some maize, some cassava, but the cassava is not going well.
Despite their efforts to weed out these flowers, they find that the weed is very resistant to the local control measures. And they blame the spread of the weed on some youths in the area, whom they say they planted it with the aim of smoking it.
Appeal would be to the relative authority, for example, the government, to come up and help us do away with this weed here.
But studies show that striga is difficult to control as it produces thousands of small and light seeds per plant that are easily and widely dispersed by wind, water, animals, and agriculture implements. They also can lie dormant but still potentially active for many years.
A rally driver and businessman Ponciano Lwakataka will face additional charges of assault in court this afternoon. Lwakataka appeared before Kasese Grade 1 Magistrate George Mfitundinda. The businessman was arraigned in court this morning on charges relating to dealing in immature fish, but this was adjourned as his legal team look for new sureties before he can be bailed.
Requested that the matter be stood over as we arrange our sureties
because at first we thought he had been charged with one offense of assault. When we reached here, we have realized that there are two files, one of assault of one Abdul Karim, and the second file is dealing in immature fish, an offense which we don't know whether it exists or not.
The recent clashes in the southwestern Uganda districts of Bundibujo, Kasese and Toroko have been put down to tribal differences. But some political scholars are spelling doom for Uganda if government and President Yoweri Museveni do not review the manner in which kingdoms and chiefdoms are created. Solomon Serwanja now explores the question of cultural institutions and the toxic mix of politics in this special report.
Security agencies have blamed ethnic differences to the recent attacks in Bundibujo, Kasese, and in Toroko districts. The fallout can probably be compared to a volcanic eruption following the long simmering tension between the smaller Bamba and the larger Bakonzo communities. President Museveni has always argued that cultural institutions promote unity and development in their areas, but some scholars on politics and good governance posit that the return of monarchies could lead the country in a dangerous path to ethnic chauvinism. A policy analyst, Godbatu Mushabe, who is also the director of Great Lakes Institute for Strategic Studies, says the foundation on which monarchies were reintroduced was faulty.
When the government short-circuited the constitution-making process and decided to use the Army Council to be able to return the properties of Buganda Kingdom. And I think that was mistake number one, that from that point, the president projected himself as the giver of kingdoms and kingdom properties. So you don't have a system where the traditionalists or the monarchists are negotiating with the citizens of Uganda, with the formal institutions of state, to say this is the institution.
In 1993, President Museveni restored the four main kingdoms, Buganda, Bunyoro, Toro, and Busoga, that President Milton Obote abolished in 1966. But as months turned into years, the president bent over backwards to demands from other cultural leaders to create new kingdoms and chiefdoms. Tumushabe argues that the president opened a Pandora's box that could only be closed at a very high cost.
Now, it should have been very easy to say we will restore kingdoms that existed in 1967 and be able to build upon that and create a dynamic system where there is mutual recognition and mutual respect between these institutions and government. But we've seen government deliberately create these small kingdoms. And unless one is naive, you realize that it is clearly deliberate to actually reduce the powers of the existing kingdoms.
In an attempt to protect young kingdoms and chiefdoms, President Museveni has on many occasions ordered security agencies to resist what he calls intimidation from the mighty kingdoms.
Pump action!
For today, no, My Highness.
You're here to fight for the Bagwisi Bamba.
Not why I'm here.
Ati abantu bano omugenzi Kawamala, omugenzi Mukirane, omugenzi Hati, Mpadi. Ekyabalikiyo okulwana ekaba ly'ejogo. Atusobola okulwanisa ejogo kandi okajoga abantu.
The result of this approach manifested in the 2009 Kayunga riots, when Buganda Premier John Baptist Walusimbi was blocked from going to Kayunga, an area under the Sabanyala, to prepare for the Kabaka's visit. The Kabaka was also blocked. This played out last year when government blocked the Omusinga, or the King of Rwenzururu Kingdom, from traveling to Bundibujo district, largely occupied by the Bamba ethnic group.
You see, the moment the government becomes an active player in a potentially controversial policy agenda or process like this one, it has basically reduced its legitimacy to be an arbiter in this process. And that is the crisis in which we find ourselves. So the government cannot be the one that goes to arbitrate between the Bamba and the Bakonjo.
Political history Don Mwambutsi and Devesa shares the same sentiments.
They attack government installations because they have a feeling that it is a central government that was behind the recognition of the Bundibujo cultural institution without first negotiating it with them to determine the boundaries, to determine the limits of which kingdom, which cultural area, and things like that. So they have a grudge with the center.
The return of Buganda Kingdom's properties also escalated grievances between cultural institutions and the central government.
But there are also other kingdoms that are demanding properties. A government that wants to create harmony, you would see that government sit, maybe write even a white paper and say, this is how we will resolve the properties of kingdoms. And you do it once and for all. But you see, you can't do it on a case-by-case basis. You exclude others, include this one.
Both political analysts read sinister moves behind the president's mind game.
Once we allow you to have your king, what is in it for us? When the other community says, no, for us we want our own district, you go in a transaction. If we give you a district, you will support us.
Whether President Museveni is trying to smoothen the rough edges of different cultural institutions ahead of the 2016 elections, or moving to create a better country of peace and unity through mutual respect, time will be the ultimate bearer of truth as regards Uganda's future. Solomon Serwanja, NTV.
Thank you, Solomon. Let's take a breather. We'll be back shortly.
On the next episode, brought to you by
At Orange, we know you want to do more on the internet. That's why we bring you happy hour day and night.
Life Stories.
Weekend oku Life Stories ndi Bihare ekyalo Katoje wano Mbarara district wenzo okukyalira mwana mulenzi w'emyaka 12 gwe bayita Musa eyakeera ku macyange emisiwa gyonna gyekutte. Kikyotegeeza nti mufuta alina kyayinza kukola wadde okukola bw'atasobola.
Egwapira ddala n'ebigero biraba bwe bamukola byonna tebikkirizza.
Bw'atyo n'alimala tosuba ku ssaawa 11 ku Sunday wano ku NTV.
Can download movies at the lowest prices and never fast from Orange. Dial *133# to buy a data bundle. Happy hour changes with Orange. Today changes with Orange.
Welcome back. Another cult in Mityana district is sabotaging the ongoing national ID registration exercise. Leaders of this cult were summoned to the Mityana RDC's office following reports that they are encouraging their followers to reject the exercise.
John Seiga, Michael Chintu and Lawrence Kayanja are the brains behind this new cult in Mityana. The name of the cult is not known. The trio is accused of discouraging their followers in Mityana district, particularly in Namungo village, from taking part in the national identity card exercise.
That they don't want to be identified in any way.
We are touched by these Ugandan citizens who do not believe in the registration exercise, calling it evil and satanic.
Pini gibawa abantu pini namba eri lukanga nkaga mu mukaaga kati lukanga nkaga mu kati tuyinza kukkiriza kututeekebwa ku kyenyi
ate bayibuli etugamba nti nno omuntu yenna anaateekebwako akabonero ak'omukyenyi oba ku mukono ogwa ddyo wakunywa ku mwenge gw'obusungu bwa Katonda.
Followers of this cult are not allowed to engage in any exercise that uses numbers. Children are not supposed to attend school. The cult also discourages them from going to hospitals for medical attention. Neither are they allowed to bathe.
Banaaba bakkiriza ennamba eyo okuvaamu gye tutya tujja kusobola okwewandiisa.
Then I'm very sorry. I've ordered the OC police to close their church until further notice.
Cultism is one of the biggest challenges affecting the National Identity Card project. A similar case appeared in Masaka and Sembable districts at the beginning of this year.
This will come as music to the ears of Arsenal fans. Arsenal has signed Chile international striker Alexis Sanchez from Barcelona on a long-term contract for a fee in the region of £35 million. And FIFA has rejected Uruguay and Liverpool striker Luis Suarez's appeal against a 4-month ban from all football-related activities for biting Italy's Giorgio Chiellini. These stories are coming up in our international sports roundup. The 25-year-old scored 47 goals in 141 appearances for Barca and netted 2 goals in the World Cup in Brazil. The Gunners also remain on course to sign French right-back Mathieu Debuchy from Newcastle United. Liverpool were keen on recruiting Sanchez as part of the deal that is likely to take striker Luis Suarez from Anfield to the new camp, but that is now expected to be a straight cash transfer. Juventus had also shown a strong interest in Sanchez, but the Italians were reportedly closing in on Real Madrid forward Alvaro Morata instead. Sanchez, who made 71 appearances for Chile, scoring 24 goals, helped his country reach the World Cup last 16, where they lost on penalties to Brazil. He completed his medical in London yesterday and will join up with his new teammates at the end of July after spending some time on holiday following the World Cup. Meanwhile, Suarez was banned for 9 international matches after the incident at the World Cup in Brazil. The Uruguayan FA had described FIFA's ruling as an excessive decision for which there was not enough evidence. Suarez can now make a further appeal to the Court of Arbitration for Sport. Football's governing body also imposed a fine of 100,000 Swiss francs on Suarez, who has apologized for his behavior. Under the terms of the suspension, Suarez cannot train with his club and is prohibited from entering the confines of any stadium, although Players Union FIFPro argue the details lack clarity. And that wraps up NTV at One. Up next is Omumoli Gwemizanyo with David Numansi and company. From the team behind the scenes, have a good afternoon.